Leadership. Failure. Leadership. Response. You see, I've been studying leadership for a long time. I've also experienced a ton of failure. And in fact, over the last couple of weeks, I kind of had a little bit of a double whammy. So, when I speak to people about leadership, sometimes I leave myself open to criticism or feedback or elements that might not be the most positive thing that somebody could hear. And if you're going to take leadership seriously, you have to be willing to accept that. You have to be open for that. So let me just divulge a couple of big failures that came up in the last couple weeks. One was packing up a camper van that I spent 9 months building and driving to Texas with a lot of worldly goods in that camper van, and then getting about 300 miles out of Austin and having a mechanical failure. And instead of sticking a pin in the week right then and there and cutting my losses, I pushed that van all the way to Austin and ended up damaging the motor. So I'm walking around in a park right now in Southern California because I flew home. And that camper van, well, that's a monument to my failure, parked on a friend of a friend's lawn in Austin, Texas. Yeah, that would be an example of leadership and failure. But let's look at response. Now, it might not be the best for a leader to pat himself on the back in front of people all the time, but I want you to understand where response becomes such an important issue when you look at the framework of everything involved. See, leadership requires action. And so if I would have stuck a pin in things and kind of just hung out in San Angelo, Texas for however long it would have taken to maybe get some help and fix my van, well, I wouldn't have been accomplishing things that, quite honestly, needed to be accomplished that week. One of which was to attend a 3-day intensive training with Andrew Eggleton, who is a phenomenal presenting coach. He's phenomenal, so why would I want to miss that? So yeah, I pushed, and I got there, and I paid the price. But you can see where being a leader means you need influence. How do you get influence? You get influence through action, and that action actually led to some influence. So was it a complete loss? No. But let's talk about another example of failure in regards to leadership. You see, about 3 years ago, I launched a thing called Power Sport Academy. And I was introducing communication and leadership skills to motorcycle dealerships, primarily in their service departments, to help them drive parts and labor sales. Now, 3 years into this, I really don't think I've penetrated dealers with an awareness campaign properly. And I really don't think that even focusing on communication and leadership and talking to these dealer owners, I don't think that they fully comprehend the value of what that brings. So I can tell you firsthand, my experience with studying leadership as a lifelong learner of leadership and communication. It's had a huge impact. It's enabled me to network around the globe. It's enabled me to be an entrepreneur, to be a professional corporate employee, to be a husband, to be a dad, to be a friend, to be a mentor, to be a confidant. Things that I don't see a lot of other people having the inherent skills to do without putting the work into it. And so I'm trying to offer this. I'm trying to offer this to service writers and service managers at motorcycle dealerships to help them improve their parts and labor sales. Now, here's what I found. After 3 years of this, and after visiting dealers in person, in the wake of a broken supply chain, having no inventory on the floor that they can sell, by generating their sales cash flow through a pre-order system, which is a completely new way of doing business for a motorcycle dealership. Even in the midst of all that, these dealers look me square in the eye and say, well, we really can't increase our service sales because we're too busy. We don't have the staff. We already have a 3-week lead time to get people in for service. We can't this, we can't that. And they're operating in a scarcity mindset that has them convinced that they're already operating at their optimal, or they know there's room for improvement, but realistically, is it safe to say they could attain that? And folks, I'm going to tell you what I've realized is it's like trying to perform an intervention with an alcoholic or a drug addict. If they don't recognize that there's a problem, if they don't come to the table looking for an answer to why their efficiency, productivity, employee turnover, lack of training, lack of willingness, poor culture, poor customer retention, if they don't recognize those things and don't recognize that there are tools available to get them over that lip, they're not going to do it. So after 3 years of launching the Powersport Academy and helping a company like BRP launch their quality service program, I've really come to understand that it is like performing an intervention. It is like, hey, if you can't acknowledge there's a problem, how in the world am I going to entice you with the solution? Now, the dealers that we've worked with, oh my goodness, $500,000 to $800,000 in extra revenue for a department for a year. I mean, for a small business, that's amazing. But be realistic. When I visit a dealership and the service manager is working instead of managing, or when I visit a dealership and they have one motorcycle on the showroom floor that they can sell, or when I visit a car dealership, yes, I've expanded, and I started to visit some car and automotive dealerships as well. And when I visit those dealers and they've got 26 cars on the front line, but only 2 of them are new units, you have to ask yourself, what are you in business for? What are you selling? And when you start to ask questions like, what are you selling? And what are you in business for? Well, that's akin to saying leadership, decisions, purpose. And quite honestly, most dealers that I talk to, they haven't asked themselves these questions. They're still operating under the understanding that the OEMs are going to pick up production, or that the supply chain is going to get fixed, or that inventory is going to be restored, or that they're going to continue to basically market value adjust the cost of goods to drive their profits regardless of inventory flow. And folks, that flies in the face of common sense. That flies in the face of reality. That flies in the face of how could this possibly happen? Another thing to think about, the OEMs dealing with these dealerships, they've cut staff. Remember when COVID broke out and they were cutting staff and having layoffs and sending everybody remote and removing management positions, and then the supply chain took effect and we were told we couldn't get chips, right? We couldn't get chips for ECUs and ECMs, and so that we weren't going to be able to get new cars, new motorcycles, new this, new that. What's an interesting thing that happened to these companies? Yeah, they posted profits during the pandemic. So how is it that they were able to reduce their flow of product, not supply the dealerships, basically fictionalized an increased demand in product and turn more profit. That comes back to leadership, comes back to critical thinking. It comes back to taking time to ask yourself the difficult questions. I just saw a post on LinkedIn yesterday, and it was asking, well, what are the things that general managers in the automotive business struggle with? And it was, supply chain, and then it was preparing for a buy-sell. Now, a buy-sell is when a dealership sells to another organization. So preparing for a buy-sell. Then it was, I can't remember the third one. The third one, because the fourth one was finding technicians, which I thought was bizarre. It should have been number one, to be honest with you. Finding technicians. And then it had, basically 5 or 6 things on the list. That's what GMs are worried about. What should GMs really be worried about? Internal culture, communication, customer relations, customer retention, technician retention, training. It was about the push for EV from the government and from other entities was one of the things. And if we get back to reality, if we get back to critical thinking and we take a moment, my comment to that thread was general managers think in these terms because they're not given the bandwidth or the ability or the empowerment to think outside of, well, how have we always done business? You see, if you're worried about EVs getting forced on you at the dealer level and you're not looking at the overall impact of EVs on the environment, the awakening to the American public to that, and you're not looking at the current offerings, success and failure rate of these current offerings, and you're not looking at the overall percentage increase or decrease of EVs versus internal combustion engines, regardless of what the government or the OEMs want to push our way, the American people aren't signing up. Now, if that reduces the amount of new vehicles sold, but you're still a dealership, you need to focus on fixed operations, service, customer retention to drive your ongoing profits, that vertical income stream. You need to do that. Now, if you're a general manager and you're not given the bandwidth or the lateral ability to make decisions on business that way, well, then your dealership's going to continue to do what it's always done. Depend on sales to drive profits and margins, regard service as a necessary evil, and fail to build your business or retain your customers. You see, as a leader, as a student of leadership, I was able to, as I opened with, say leadership, failure, leadership, response. You see, it's okay to fail, but you have to give yourself the bandwidth. You have to give yourself the time and the moment to have a response. Now, my response to the dealer training issue that I'm facing, quite simply, is to revamp the offer. Instead of every package coming with training and coaching and all these things, I'm going to reduce the cost of entry. And I'm going to allow people to come and take the training at the Powersport Academy on a train at your own pace, right? Train on your level, do it at your pace at a very affordable rate. So no coaching, no added sales, no extra things to buy. Just get access to the curriculum and train yourself at your own pace. Have access to the community, make friends, things like that, because we've got a social channel in there as well. But give more people access to the basic information at a very low cost of entry. Then have a coached version available. That coached version, the pricing's going to stay pretty similar to what it is. Maybe have a little reduction. But I'm also reducing a little bit of the service there. I used to do one-on-one coaching calls with all my clients. Now what I'm going to do is group those calls together and put people into groups, almost like a 20-group situation for sales. So I'm going to be able to lower the cost of entry for that service, but I'm still going to be able to offer coaching on a group basis, if you're tracking me on this. And then, here's the kicker. Wholesale, dealers have failed to recognize this need. wholesale, on a wholesale basis, dealers have refused the intervention. So there's a few that'll sign up and really take it serious. Not the masses, there's a few. What do those few really want? Well, it turns out the few really want me to show up. They want me to hop on an airplane and show up at their dealership and give them one-on-one coaching and work with their departments and negotiate relationships through their parts sales and service management. And you know what? Give the public what they want. So that's the big change that's coming. Is I used to think I couldn't duplicate my efforts wholesale across 50 or 100 or 200 dealers. But let's be real. It's been 3 years. I don't have to worry about duplicating my efforts over 50 or 100 or 200 dealers. Because there's not 200 dealers in this country that recognize or care enough about growing their business and supporting their staff to make that difference. So let's just focus on the ones that do. So that's the big change that you see in the Powersport Academy. Remember, I started at the very beginning. I said failure, then leadership, and response. It's about having the response. Now, the response to the van breaking down, it sounds like a simple thing, right? Van's broken, get it fixed. Now, we're going to have it towed home. We're going to do a needs assessment. And then we have to figure out, are we going to fix it and sell it, fix it and keep it? It's really become part of the branding for what I do. And as far as the Action Leadership Team goes, it really is, I think, integral to some of the branding and imagery that I've put forth in that project. So, yeah, we're going to keep pushing. Remember when I said I had to recognize that I had miscalculated my audience or my audience needs? Yeah, that's a failure too. The response to that failure is the release of the Action Leadership Team and the release of the book, Action Leadership from the Edge. You see, I love power sports, and I really, really thought that I would be able to help the power sports community level up or enlighten themselves or really tackle some of the cultural issues that are involved in most dealerships. I really thought that I had a way to help them improve. But again, it's like an intervention. If they don't want to improve, I can't force them to improve. So I've decided to release Action Leadership from the Edge. It's a full-blown leadership book. I'm really, really happy with the way it's turned out. We're releasing a sister website called actionleadershipteam.com. That actionleadershipteam.com, over time, based on your needs, based on your wants, based on your input, will grow. It tackles things like, if you take a look at our blog post from this week, it tackles things like, it ain't what they say it is. Like, here we are arguing over distractions, and those arguments are based on false premises from the very beginning. So, as we begin to grow this community, the Action Leadership Team, I'm thrilled to know that there's some people that are going to join from the power sports industry, and they're really going to see some growth out of it. But I'm also super pleased to see that it's going to be people that have online courses, online communities in neighborhoods, churches, schools, and we're going to be able to positively impact people by calling things what they are, by being clear in our terminologies, by being clear in our purpose, by being clear in our intentions. And I really think it's going to be fun to exercise the gift of leadership. I welcome you in there. Go to actionleadershipteam.com. Check out what we've got going on. As this thing takes more shape, I think you're really going to be impressed with how we've put things together. I'm not trying to do things in a partisan kind of way. I'm trying to invite everybody. Why? Because everybody has a natural call to leadership. And I consider it my job, my goal, my purpose, my intention to help lead everybody towards their natural call for leadership. It can be as big or as small as you envision, but the trick is taking that next step and embracing that calling. And that's what this project's all about. I love you guys. I'll talk to you later.